This is the real deal. This is the whole enchilada. This is the thing people sit in prison for a long time, by the way. That is the new expanded congressional case tonight against Donald Trump, laid out in public with this new evidentiary material and an excerpt from this forthcoming blockbuster January 6th report. Now, you heard Congressman Raskin there go through it. I want to tell you that very last felony he mentioned is really by far the most serious. In fact, let's run just that back.
Or it gives aid and comfort to those engaged in insurrection.
Aid or comfort to those engaged in insurrection. And in this case, those engaged in insurrection were the individuals that Donald Trump recruited and summoned to Washington and supported, and is also now publicly vowing to pardon. This goes way beyond that old, seemingly quaint talk about a speech inciting a riot. If you followed the second Trump impeachment, as we did around here, you may remember there was a lot of talk about incitement and words and free speech, and can you give a speech like that? And the answer, by the way, which I've told you before, whether people like it or not, is you really can give a wild, irresponsible speech most of the time under the law. What you can't do is try to specifically and explicitly drive armed individuals into the Congress as they clamor to assassinate your vice president and others. So if some of this is familiar, or you even say, gosh, yeah, I've heard about some of this if you followed the hearings, today is legally different. This is now in public, the widest possible case, alleging Trump used these illegal means to both peacefully and violently obstruct the proceeding, defraud the U.S., make false claims through elector fraud, and then, of course, that insurrection itself. So next, this goes to the federal prosecutors who are already probing the insurrection in Donald Trump's role. They can review the same evidence and whatever other evidence they might secretly have and reach a judgment about whether to indict and try Donald Trump on all four of these charges, or some of these charges, or different charges, or none of these charges. That's what the DOJ is now considering. This is not a quick or easy process. It ain't supposed to be. But if you say, what is Congress doing? And is there more heat on the DOJ? And if that heat is based on evidence, is that a good thing? Well, tonight, all of those things are building together. Before this Congress peacefully hands off its governmental powers, there's been no talk of anything like a second insurrection when the Republicans take the gavel in January. Before they peacefully hand off their powers, they are using them in this very dramatic way, historically unprecedented. With that in mind, I want to bring in two sober experts who've dealt with exactly these kind of tough calls. The former acting U.S. Solicitor General of the United States under Barack Obama, Neil Katyal, and the former head of the famed Southern District of New York, David Kelly, and full disclosure, my former boss in law. Welcome to both of you. David, I mentioned that some of these things can be difficult calls. And from the outside, it looks like, duh, video, violence, what more do you need? But from the inside, the prosecutors have to very fairly go through the evidence. Walk us through from the DOJ side, where you've done tough cases, what it means to assess exactly this kind of case, which we know the special counsel is already supposed to be doing.
Yeah, so it's a good question, Ari, because obviously this is a hugely significant and historical act that occurred today, as you pointed out at the outset of your broadcast. From a prosecutor's standpoint, I'm not looking at evidence. I'm looking at information. I'm being handed a bunch of information, a ton of information from Congress, who did a laudable job of interviewing, countless witnesses, going through millions of documents. It's my job as a prosecutor now to determine this is great information. Can I make it evidence? Can I make it evidence that is going to be admissible in a court of law? How do I do that? And you actually really, as a prosecutor, you take, the way I would approach this is I would kind of skim the fat and look at what I really need to make a charge. And each piece of evidence, I would do it like kind of an order of proof. What do I need to prove each element of the offense? What is the information Congress has given me? How do I take that piece of information and turn it into a piece of evidence? In other words, how do I make it something that is admissible in a court of law? So, for example, you talked to Kayleigh, I forget her last name, she gave a lot of information concerning the drive where
Cassidy
the
Hutchinson.
president, Yeah, she was talking about how the president was trying to push to be driven up to the Capitol, and Secret Service said no. That, from her perspective, is really hearsay, right? She can't report what someone else has said, but the information is that there were others present. So I can, as a prosecutor, go to those others who were present and see if I can make them provide testimony, admissible testimony about what, from a firsthand perspective, happened. So look, there wasn't a lot of new revelations or revelations today in terms of the evidence. There was some new stuff, but not a lot. My guess is that the Justice Department already has an awful lot of this in hand, and has also already undertaken or begun to undertake this calculation, this process.
And that goes to what they're going to do. I mean, there have been times where publicly they looked a little behind the committee on the electoral fraud plot, for example. There are other times where they've been all over it. I'm curious, Neil, what you think today means.
Well, today means, Ari, that we've always been talking about Trump and the big lie. And today, I think what the committee did is say there's another set of words to describe what Trump did, and that is federal crimes. And what they did was methodically walk through what, David is saying he would be looking for, the elements of the offense, of these offenses, and the evidence that they found, which David's absolutely right. It's not a federal court, it's Congress. And so there's different standards that apply to a criminal trial. But it is a roadmap, and that's, I think, the word that the chairman of the committee called it, Representative Thompson, a roadmap to justice. It's basically telling Jack Smith, the special counsel, here's how you prosecute this, and by the way, we think you should. Now, that, by the way, is not legally binding on them in any way. Jack Smith could refuse to even read the referral by the Justice Department, put it in a trash can. Obviously, I don't think he's going to do that, but the point is, this is just a set of words right now. It by itself doesn't have a legal implication. But I do think that it is, as a matter of realpolitik, quite important, because what it is the Congress of the United States saying, for the first time ever in American history, we think that this former president committed really serious federal crimes. And it's going to, I think, subtly influence the Justice Department investigation. Jack Smith's still independent, and Merrick Garland will make his own determination, of course. But I do think it's important. It's an important step in prosecuting a former president.